Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot Illinois. Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and today we want to talk about House Speaker Michael Madigan and what a week he has had. On Monday, he invited the governor, Pat Quinn, to come in and talk to the House Democratic Caucus, and it didn't go very well, did it, Matt?
No, it didn't. And what was assumed was that until this point, Governor Quinn's effort to make the 2011 temporary tax increase permanent, that it was almost a done deal with maybe a few, handful of Democrats in the House on the fence. Of course, all the Republicans are against extending or making permanent the tax increase.
Right.
But it was believed generally that in the House, most of the 71 members were already in favor of it, but it would take some convincing to bring a handful around. But we found out this week, Speaker Madigan came out and said he's got 34 who are going to vote for it. That's 26 shy of the 60 that they need.
Right. He needs 60 votes, and he's got essentially a week and a day to get them. And so when he announced after a second meeting earlier this week that he only had 34, he also told everyone that he told his budget legislators to go back to their working groups and craft a budget with a $4 billion cut, because he's, the assumption is they're not going to get the income tax increase. But he says he's still working it. He hopes that confronting those cuts will convince more of his caucus to vote for this tax increase. He says, although some people are questioning whether that's really his motivation and whether he really wants this tax increase or not. What do you think?
If you talk to anyone in Illinois politics who knows Speaker Madigan, who has worked with Speaker Madigan, one thing that you'll find out is that the number one priority is preserving his majority in his chamber.
That's why he's been around for 43 years.
Exactly right, and that's why he's been the leader, the House Speaker, for all but 2 years since 1983. He is very, very focused on that, and one thing that you have to consider this year is, yes, he probably does want that income tax increase to be made permanent, because it really expands the budget. You're talking about another couple $2 billion next year. On the other hand, he has a lot of members who are running in districts where voters are not going to be very happy if they see a candidate who has voted for a tax increase.
Right.
And I think Speaker Madigan is very cognizant of that, as are his members.
He wants to live to fight another day.
Correct.
So things are very fluid. They're changing by the minute, as happens this time of year. In the meantime, Speaker Madigan clearly is making sure that he's throwing everything but the kitchen sink onto the ballot at this point to try to make sure that he's drumming up turnout amongst Democratic-leaning voters in the state of Illinois, because he's also this week has put on track for passage the millionaire tax as an advisory question on the ballot for November.
Right, which means it wouldn't become law if voters approve it, but if voters approve it, then lawmakers, the Democratic General Assembly has a mandate then.
And then the same thing with increasing the minimum wage, which has been a huge wedge issue in Illinois and nationally for Democrats that they've been using.
And that would be a big driver of low-income voters who are primarily Democrats. At the same time, of course, Speaker Madigan's allies are in court fighting two other ballot initiatives, and these are constitutional amendments that would be law, one of which is redistricting reform, which is not a partisan issue per se, but it's one that's very, leaders of the, like Speaker Madigan, do not want to lose the power to draw their own legislative districts.
Right.
And the second big one that he's fighting is a term limits referendum that Bruce Rauner is supporting, and that would be, if that's on the ballot, that's going to be a big driver of Republican turnout.
So we will see how it all shakes out. 1 week and a day to go in the legislative session for the spring. We'll be keeping an eye on things. We hope you will too. It goes without saying, But no matter what you think of Speaker Madigan, he's a brilliant tactician and political strategist, and he's working all the levers as we speak. That's it for this week. We'll see you again on the next edition of Only in Illinois.